Saturday started like any other in the countryside. Clear skies, the smell of manure in the air, a rooster crowing lazily, and a milk truck stuck at the entrance to the farm. The difference? The entrance was closed. Literally, it was sealed off with zebrafish tape, orange cones, and a badly painted wooden sign that read, "Banned by community decision, HOA in action." For a second, I thought it was a prank, some bored teenager from the city trying to be funny. But when I saw two guys in reflective vests standing in front of the gate looking like mall security guards, I realized it was serious. One of them was even holding a clipboard. The other had a camel radio, pretending to be communicating with some invisible center. It only took me a couple more steps before I saw her. Her arms were crossed. Her sunglasses were bigger than her face. She wore a white linen blouse, and her hair was slicked back as if it had come straight out of a 90s commercial. She stood there as if she owned the world, or, in this case, my farm. When she saw me, she gave me a polite, forced smile, the kind you know comes with poison. "You can't come in. The community has decided that the entrance to your property is outside the standards allowed by the HOA. We're doing a visual reorganization of the rural road, all in the name of safety and landscape harmony." She said this as if she were quoting urban gospel, as if the dirt road that leads to my barn was a threat to the existential aesthetics of her neighborhood, as if the chickens running loose inside were feathered terrorists. She just forgot one detail. That road is private property, and I'm the one who runs the law around here. But at that moment, I decided to observe the kind of people who take this kind of action like an audience. They like to appear, to feel in control. While she was talking about community zoning, collective decisions, and emergency intervention, I was already pulling out my cell phone. I took pictures of the cones, the ridiculous sign, the vest of the makeshift security guards, and her face. I recorded everything, because these people are only respectful when they feel that the prank is going to be costly. What really amazed me was the level of the operation. She set it up as if she were coordinating a FEMA mission. There was even a printed pamphlet explaining the reason for the ban, a bunch of made-up phrases about visual protection of local heritage and prevention of environmental contamination caused by waste not compatible with the style of the community. In short, she didn't like seeing my farm from her balcony. The beaten earth, the mud on the tractor wheels, the little wooden fence. It was all too ugly for her taste. It became a joke when one of the guards tried to stop me from approaching the gate. He held his hand in the air as if it were a police blockade. He said, "Sir, please wait. We are under instructions from the HOA to limit access until adjustments are made." The guy had no idea who he was talking to. None whatsoever. But as I said, it wasn't time to show the badge yet. It was time to let them dig deeper. I went back to the truck. I started it up, turned around, and drove to the police station. I made a point of not turning on the siren. No show. Just the sound of the engine was enough to put the pressure on. I opened the side gate, went inside, printed out the land registrations, the property records, the official maps from the town hall, all duly stamped, signed, sealed, and dated. I took with me a copy of the municipal code and some photos of the old road that has been there since before she was even born. I was back at the entrance to the farm in less than 40 minutes. She was still there, drinking green juice from a thermos, as if she were on an afternoon tea break. One of the security guards was now reading a comic book. The other was sitting in the shade, looking like he was beginning to understand that this could go badly. She saw me coming again, with a folder of documents in my hand, and let out a, "Oh, you're back with legal reinforcements, are you?" The way she said legal almost made me laugh. I thought he was going to quote the residential-style harmony code next. I took a deep breath. I took my badge out of my pocket. I showed it calmly, not arrogantly, but firmly. The woman froze for 2 seconds. Then she tried to laugh. "Ah, I didn't know you were from the county." Her voice came out choked. One of the security guards immediately stood up. The other started to put the comic away. "This is trespassing," interference on a rural road for exclusive use, blocking without a court order, and you've just committed 3 federal offenses in less than an hour. The green juice ran down the side of the bottle, but the most beautiful thing was yet to come. Because she thought this was just another local confrontation, a neighborhood raid, little did she know that it would become a state case, and that the very documents she used to try to justify the blockade were going to turn against her. The tape was already torn, the cones kicked aside, and the 2 guards disappeared as soon as they saw the badge. What was left at the entrance to my farm was her, standing with her arms crossed, as if she were supporting her empire just by posing. The problem is that an empire without a foundation falls with the first breath of truth. And I blew. At the police station, I officially registered the blockade as trespassing and disturbing rural order. Yes, there is such a name. It's used for exactly this kind of ridiculous spectacle where a neighborhood association thinks it can rule more than the Constitution. I took the documents straight to the prosecutor. The man could barely hide his laughter when he saw the community decision written in Comic Sans font, with a little flower stamp in the corner and the signature of the woman herself, signing as Regional Director of Territorial Harmony. It didn't take him long to open an investigation. The town hall was notified, the Secretary of Works received a very objective call, and the state's own head of urban zoning asked for the original maps of the road that had been closed. The woman didn't know who she was dealing with, not because it was me, specifically, but because justice here may ride an old tractor, but it treads firmly when it needs to. 3 days later, the inspection truck pulled up at the entrance to the farm, this time with real uniformed staff, with badges, official clipboards, and the look of someone who was there to dismantle a circus. The inspection wasn't just on the road. They also raided the HOA's records, went to the makeshift headquarters it had set up in the condominium's ballroom and took everything. Forged minutes, lists of meetings that never took place, documents signed by residents who had already moved out more than a year ago. One of the inspectors later told me that she tried to claim that she was just implementing decisions already approved by the collective. But that collective was herself and half a dozen residents who had been coerced with threats of fines for not cutting the grass diagonally. There was even a man who reported having received a warning for planting mint outside the permitted limit of the fence. Yes, mint in a pot. According to her, the smell invaded the olfactory limits of the neighborhood. The final straw was the discovery of an internal email in which she warned the other members of the pseudo-committee that she was going to show the sheriff who's boss in the neighborhood. A short sentence, but with enormous weight. That sealed her fate. The prosecutor's office attached it to the investigation as proof of deliberate intent to provoke, to usurp power, to make justice a joke with duct tape. And yet, the woman didn't let up. She went around the neighborhood handing out leaflets with her face printed on them and the title, Defender of Visual Order. She held meetings in the front yard, called the neighbors, and handed out iced tea with leaflets, saying that the farm represented an aesthetic risk to the sustainable advancement of the community. She spoke as if she were the founder of a new country, a country where rustic gates and the smell of cows were crimes against humanity. But while she was decorating her speech with words that no one really uses, the investigation continued unabated. The road was cleared, access restored, and my property was up and running again. But the siege around it began to close in. The HOA, the association she claimed to chair, was forced to issue an official statement saying that the actions she had taken had neither approval nor legal backing. Basically, they threw her under the bus. With one detail, the bus was driven by the very community she was trying so hard to control. The day of the hearing arrived with a closed sky. Those gray clouds that looked like omens, only in this case, the storm wasn't going to fall on me. The courtroom was full. People from the neighborhood, small-town journalists, curious people who had heard about the story by word of mouth. It became the event of the week. The woman who had more power than the mayor in the region was finally going to be held to account. And it wasn't for a little meeting in the garden with iced tea and a wholemeal cookie. It was in front of a real judge. She entered the room as if she were arriving at a parade. She was dressed in white, with a structured blazer, and her hair done up as if she were going to do a TV interview. She was carrying a pink briefcase with a label that read HOA, Visual Order and Progress. A ready-made joke, only unfunny. He wasn't smiling this time. His face was frozen, but he was still trying to maintain a posture of control, as if this was just a technical obstacle that she could overcome with fancy words and ready-made phrases. The judge didn't have time for a show. He began by reading out the 3 main points of the indictment: blocking a rural public road, falsifying community documents, and abuse of authority on behalf of an association with no legal backing. The prosecutor presented simple, clear evidence: the photos of the entrance to my farm surrounded by cones, the handmade sign with craft paint, the emails where she signed as regional president of a position that didn't exist. When the prosecutor read aloud the sentence, "The entrance to the farm must be deactivated so that the visual standard of the community is maintained without rustic contamination," the judge frowned as if trying to understand if he had heard correctly. And he had. That's right. She was talking about aesthetic contamination as if mud and the smell of grass were urban diseases. Her defense was a tragedy with touches of comedy. They tried to say that the road passed through a community living area, that the entrance to the farm had been opened without alignment with the collective use standards established in the HOA convention. The problem is that there was no approved convention, no minutes with a legitimate vote, no document registered with the town hall. It was all a matter of shouting, posing, on letterhead, that she herself had made by an online printing company. The highlight of the disaster was when she asked to speak. She said she had a statement. The judge allowed it. She stood up, calmly adjusted the microphone, and began to give a speech as if it were a motivational lecture. She spoke of community harmony, shared aesthetic values, a strategic vision of regional development. He said that the entrance to my farm detracted from the panoramic view of the residents who have invested in quality of life. I was sure I was going to win sympathy. I just didn't expect the whispers from the audience. With every sentence, someone shook their head. One lady even snorted. A man let out a quiet but audible, "Oh, well done." The judge interrupted after 5 minutes. "Do you intend to present legal arguments or continue with this literary description of the neighborhood?" Silence. She hesitated. She tried to return to the text, but the damage had been done. The courtroom was not her backyard. The law was in charge there. The prosecutor was surgical in her rejoinder. She said that what was done on that road is the rural equivalent of an urban invasion armed with duct tape and ego. She argued that the blockade wasn't just symbolic, it was concrete. It prevented the farm from operating, blocked deliveries of products, and above all, it was carried out with the clear aim of causing embarrassment and reasserting control. The judge announced that he needed time to evaluate the sentence, but he made it clear that there were strong indications of abusive conduct, ideological falsehood, and violation of the right to use private property. She left the court with shorter strides. No blazer this time. And the audience, who had previously watched out of curiosity, now cheered for justice like soccer fans. The judge returned with the sentence a week later. The city's courthouse had never seen so many people gathered for a hearing that didn't involve inheritance, divorce, or a dispute over a tree planted on the wrong sidewalk. This time, it was the morals of a city that were on trial, the living symbol of ego dressed up as authority, the woman who thought that clipboards gave superpowers and that zebras could replace warrants. The room was full of watchful eyes, but she didn't show up. She sent the lawyer alone, the same one who barely sustained his presence on other days. He said he was ill and needed to rest. Someone commented that rest was now the new name for shame. The judge didn't even blink. He read the entire sentence out loud, as if he were washing the soul of the entire neighborhood. First came the obvious part: guilty of trespassing, misuse of HOA funds and documents, and obstructing a rural road without legal permission. Then, the tastiest detail: the fine. $38,000, an amount proportional to the time the road was blocked, the damage to the farm's production, and the number of emails, flyers, and absurdities she spread around the neighborhood. All documented, added up, and signed. In addition, the decision officially forbade her from holding any leadership position, be it in an association, neighborhood committee, or street WhatsApp group. The judge wrote on the paper, "The defendant's conduct demonstrates administrative imbalance and authoritarianism incompatible with any community management." In other words, she's not even good enough to organize a school raffle. The prosecutor's office also asked, and the judge granted, a recommendation that the entire structure of the HOA be audited. An external team was called in to review the bylaws, meetings, and expenses. They discovered that, in addition to the roadblock, she used association money to pay for exclusive gardening at her house, and that she bought a $5,000 awning with collective funds for community events, according to her, which never took place. Not even coffee and cookies. The cherry on top came when the city council decided to remove her name from all the association's public documents. Officially, she had never been anything, neither president, nor trustee, nor visual field coordinator. Everything she had built on ego evaporated with the stamp of a document signed by a notary's office that operates in a small room at the back of a stationery shop. The following week, the changes began. The entrance to my farm was renovated with help from the town hall. A new sign was installed: private property, free access under jurisdiction of the county. A simple sign, but it says a lot. My neighbors began to relax. No one received an anonymous note on the lawn anymore. No one was filmed by the corner camera every time they went out with the dog. She disappeared for a while. The house had its shutters closed. Some said she'd traveled. Others said she locked herself in. But the whole neighborhood breathed, and the silence she left behind was more beautiful than any symmetrical garden. My parents went back to looking after the land as before. The deliveries went through again without fear of being stopped by someone in a reflective vest and a toy whistle. And me? I've carried on doing what I've always done, working with respect, applying the law firmly, and now with a story up my sleeve. One that starts with zebra tape and ends with real justice. Deep down, all this has served as a reminder that the power of lies is short-lived. That paper with an ego stamp is worthless in the face of a land deed and a legitimate uniform, and that no matter how much they try to silence you with made-up rules, those who are right don't need to shout. They just have to wait for the right moment to knock on the door with their badge in hand. And if you liked this video, don't forget to leave a comment and a like.